International news now.
All right, so in our news segment today, we are going to talk about the indictment handed down by special counsel Robert Mueller last Friday against 13 Russian nationals, national citizens of Russia, and 3 Russian organizations. Now recall that Mueller was appointed as a special prosecutor in May of 2017 by the Justice Department. He was tasked with investigating Russian interference in the 2016 elections and any other crimes that he discovers as part of his investigation. This assignment includes investigating any potential collusion between members of the Trump presidential campaign and foreigners trying to influence the election results. The indictments are significant because they document significant evidence of Russian interference in the 2016 elections. So let me emphasize this. What's important about these indictments is how they document what Russia did and all the facets of the interference that they conducted in the 2016 election. The individuals and organizations that are charged in this indictment are charged with wire fraud, bank fraud, and conspiracy to defraud the United States by impairing the enforcement of election law. Now, one of the Russian officials charged has close ties to Russian President Vladimir Putin. His name is Yevgeny Prigozhin, and his nickname is the Chef. Everybody has to have a nickname, I guess. He has significant business interests in the food industry, hence the nickname the Chef. He's also a contractor for the Russian Ministry of Defense and its intelligence services with the acronym GRU. Now, Mueller also indicted the Internet Research Agency, which is headquartered in St. Petersburg. The indictment states that this company engaged in a coordinated cyber warfare campaign designed to influence the 2016 election and aggravate political tensions in the United States. This organization employed trolls, internet trolls, to create fake profiles on social media sites in the United States and then drive internet traffic to controversial posts that did a number of things, including criticizing Hillary Clinton, supporting Donald Trump, supporting Bernie Sanders, stoking anti-Muslim and anti-immigrant sentiment, and aggravating racial tensions in the United States. So our discussion of this story today is going to proceed in 3 stages. First, we want to provide you with some background on the indictment. We're going to focus on Russian activities and their significance for U.S. foreign policies. We are going to leave aside the question about collusion between Russian actors and the Trump campaign for now. This is still an ongoing question, but we're not going to deal with it right now, because the Deputy Attorney General went out of his way to say that the indictments that came out last week did not, let me emphasize, did not include anything on collusion. Second, after this initial background, we are going to get into some of the specifics of this cyber warfare campaign so you can see how it exactly worked. We will watch a video from the New York Times that introduces you to the role played by bots and trolls in this disinformation campaign. Third, we will conclude by discussing some of the larger political implications of these developments. They provoked a raging tweet storm by the President, Trump, over the weekend that included a public rebuke of his own national security advisor, who was giving an important foreign policy speech to world leaders at the Munich Security Conference. And the big problem with that speech is that he did not say that the interference by Russia in the 2016 election had no bearing on the final result. And we'll get into that debate as well. Now, to get some background on these developments, we are going to first watch a summary video of all of these developments from PBS NewsHour. So let's go ahead and roll that clip.
A major addition tonight to the Russia file. It is a sweeping federal indictment that names individual Russians and several companies and details a highly orchestrated campaign to interfere with the U.S. election in 2016. Deputy U.S. Attorney General Rod Rosenstein laid out the particulars this afternoon. William Brangham begins our coverage.
The indictment charges 13 Russian nationals and 3 Russian companies for committing federal crimes while seeking to interfere in the United States political system, including the 2016 presidential election.
The Deputy Attorney General laid out a detailed indictment from the Office of Special Counsel Robert Mueller, alleging a complex campaign by Russians to interfere in the 2016 election. It was designed, he said, to sow chaos in the American political system and specifically to tarnish Hillary Clinton and promote Donald Trump. Among the raft of charges, violating U.S. election laws, wire and bank fraud, and visa violations. Rosenstein, who is overseeing the special counsel probe, said the effort was run from this building in St. Petersburg, Russia. It's called the Internet Research Agency, and it houses a battalion of computer specialists and provocateurs. Today's indictment included numerous examples of just how micro-targeted the group's efforts were. By hiding their true identities, Russian activists created social media accounts that appeared to be operated by U.S. persons. They created thematic group pages on social media sites like Facebook and Instagram. They routinely deployed hashtags like Trump 2016 and Hillary for prison. The indictment cites an internal memo from the group urging its staffers to use any opportunity to criticize Hillary and the rest, except Sanders and Trump. We support them. Last spring, the NewsHour's Nick Schifrin spoke with a former staffer from this same Russian organization. He told Schifrin about their simple, blunt force approach to sowing discord online in American politics.
Suddenly you see a lot of comments at night, and they're all the same, yeah? And it's exactly the people are doing their job. They have their topic, they have a time to do it, they write it and you see it.
The man who allegedly funded this group was named in the indictment today. He is Yevgeny Prigozhin, dubbed Putin's chef for providing catering services to the Russian president. And it is Vladimir Putin whom U.S. intelligence agencies last year alleged directed the overall election interference effort, which also included hacking the email servers of the Democratic National Committee and Hillary Clinton's campaign chairman.
The conspiracy.
Today, Rosenstein said the Russians contacted, quote, unwitting individuals associated with the Trump campaign and with other political activists to coordinate their activities. But, he added,
And there's no allegation in this indictment that any American had any knowledge. And the nature of the scheme was that the defendants took extraordinary steps to make it appear that they were ordinary American political activists.
It's a Democrat hoax that was brought up as an excuse for losing an election.
President Trump has made no secret of his disdain for the entire Russian investigation, which he claims is driven by Democrats who are upset with his election. He says claims of Russian meddling are a fraud, and he's repeatedly attacked all the officials and committees investigating whether Russia did meddle and whether his campaign was involved. After the indictment dropped today, the president tweeted, Russia started their anti-U.S. campaign in 2014, long before I announced that I would run for president. The results of the election were not impacted. The Trump campaign did nothing wrong, no collusion. As for the president's labeling the entire Russia election narrative a hoax, his director of national intelligence, Dan Coates, appearing on Tuesday along with counterparts from the CIA, NSA, FBI, and other agencies, was emphatic about Russia's past actions and their future plans.
There should be no doubt that Russia perceived that its past efforts as successful and views the 2018 U.S. midterm elections as a potential target for Russian influence operations.
The special counsel's investigation is ongoing.
There was no word from Rosenstein on when or even whether the indicted Russians will be brought to the United States for trial. For the PBS NewsHour, I'm William Brangham in Washington, D.C.
Russian officials said today that the charges are, quote, absurd.
That's a good way to end. Of course they are.
Let's run through a couple of important summary points from this, and then we'll get into the specifics of the social media campaign. So first, let's talk about the goals. What were the Russians trying to do? Three faceted. Undermine Clinton. The idea was if Clinton wins, let's undermine her legitimacy so we can weaken her politically after she secures the presidency. Promote Trump, promote the candidacy of President Trump. And then third, and which is the overriding goal here, which is to accentuate and aggravate domestic political conflict inside the United States. This is about provoking the Americans to get mad at each other. And think about how you felt the day after the election on either side, and then ask yourself, did it work?
And can I interject just a second? Here, so it should be noted that the Russians didn't expect Trump to win, right? Most of the analysts think that they saw the same opinion polls that everyone else did that forecasted that Clinton was going to win. But the strategy here was to undermine Clinton, like you said, but also to kind of keep the idea that if Trump lost, it was due to some sort of malfeasance. You know, what they were trying to sow was uncertainty about the electoral process and suspicion of fraud or some sort of fraudulent behavior. And Trump was a great vehicle for this because during the campaign, he kept saying how, well, I'm not sure I would, you know, accede to the results because I'm not sure they would be fair. And so one of the things that I saw in recent news stories is they were kind of counting on if Trump lost to continue that narrative going forward after the election if there was a President Clinton, and that would help undermine her legitimacy.
And so the indictment, we're going to talk about this in a second, the indictment documents these attempts to accuse from a Tennessee GOP, fake Tennessee GOP site, fake. That was run by Russians that was accusing the Clinton campaign and election officials in Broward County in Florida of already illegally accepting mail-in ballots for Hillary Clinton in the weeks before the election even occurred. So they were already trying to undermine the legitimacy of the election process in the weeks before the election even occurred.
And this is why this is so serious, is that the real goal here is to undermine the whole system of the United States and particularly of its electoral processes. And that's why it's something that we should all be worried about. So
second, this broad social media campaign was coordinated out of the Internet Research Agency in St. Petersburg. The indictment says that these efforts in the Internet Research Agency were funded by Yevgeny Prigozhin. He put up the Capitol, and he has close ties to Vladimir Putin and the Kremlin. This suggests that this campaign was organized and authorized from the highest levels of the Russian government.
There is no way that this happened without the knowledge and approval of Vladimir Putin. No way.
So
that's
third,
just the way it works.
Yes. So third, what did they do? What did this social media campaign look like? They created social media accounts to make them look like Americans, but they're actually run by Russian nationals out of St. Petersburg. They used these accounts to help organize and pay for campaign rallies. They tried to drive internet traffic to sites and posts that were consistent with the views they sought to promote, like #HillaryForPrison. They used stolen identities of real U.S. citizens to post on organizational controlled social media accounts. The defendants were actively engaged in espionage while inside the United States. They traveled to the United States to make these connections. They engaged in identity theft of Americans to infiltrate their social media accounts and post through there. They bought advertisements on social media in the name of U.S. persons and entities. This is illegal. Foreigners are supposed to register before participating in American campaigns and elections. Okay, that's an overview of what they've done. We're going to give you more specific examples in a little bit. Fourth, we need to pay attention to what Rosenstein said when announcing the indictments. There is no allegation in the indictment, and this is an important caveat, there's no allegation in the indictment that any American had knowledge of these activities or operations. Instead, the indictment details a number of instances in which Americans and Trump campaign officials unknowingly helped facilitate traffic to these fake sites. Fifth, we got to think about the presidential response and the larger magnitude of this indictment. It contradicts the claim that Russian intervention was a fraud or a hoax. It contradicts the president's claim that he believed Putin when Putin told Trump that Russia didn't interfere in the elections. Now, Trump over the weekend tried to shift the narrative in his tweets. He then said, well, I never said that Russia didn't interfere, even though he did. And the president reinforced 2 points. These Russian activities didn't matter to the election. They had no impact. And second, he reinforced the claim again that there is no evidence of collusion from these indictments.
Okay. So now we want to take a step back a little farther and provide some more historical background on the Russian efforts to influence the 2016 election. So the Mueller indictment on Friday describes the cyber warfare campaign designed to exploit social media sites to stoke political conflict inside the United States. That was only one component of the larger information war, right? Russian officials also helped infiltrate the IT infrastructure of the Democratic National Committee. And so another big part of this story is the hacking that Russian entities did of primarily the Democratic National Committee. So they also hacked besides hacking the Democratic National Committee, they also hacked the email account of John Podesta, the campaign chairman for Hillary Clinton's presidential campaign. These Russian entities also coordinated the release of damaging information secured from these hacks, which is illegal, right, with WikiLeaks during strategically important moments in the presidential campaign of 2016. So now we are going to give you some more of this history and then get into the specifics of how this information looked. More broadly, we want you to recognize and see how the primary goal of this campaign was to aggravate and worsen existing political tensions in the United States along racial, religious, regional, and gender-based divides. So let's start with an important timeline of events in this Russia story. We got this timeline from PolitiFact.com. So it starts with Donald Trump. Donald Trump announced his candidacy for president on June 16, 2015. Hackers working with Russian intelligence agencies acquired nearly complete access to the computer network of the Democratic National Committee in July of 2015. They held on to this access until July of 2016, so a full year. Now, during that period, they were able to read all email and chat traffic and acquired a database of opposition research on Donald Trump from these sources, right? The DNC, the Democratic National Committee, then hired CrowdStrike to clean up its computer networks. The CEO of CrowdStrike was the former head of the FBI's cyber division. CrowdStrike attributed the intrusion in the emails of the DNC to two Russian hacker groups, one of which is believed to be working with the Russian military intelligence agency, the GRU. In March of 2016, the email account of Clinton's campaign chairman, John Podesta, was compromised in a phishing scam. Don't ever click on those. Jeez. So in June and July of 2016, WikiLeaks and DC Leaks released thousands of documents about Clinton and deliberations inside the Democratic National Committee. Now, DC Leaks is a front organization. It's an arm of the GRU, the Russian military intelligence agency. Okay, in July of 2016, the FBI opened an investigation into links between the Trump campaign and the Russian government. And as we talked about in our earlier discussion of the Nunez memo, this investigation was triggered by communications between a Trump campaign advisor, George Papadopoulos, and Australian diplomats in London. Now, throughout the presidential campaign, the Russian Internet Research Agency conducted a significant propaganda campaign to discredit Clinton and support Trump. Now, we are going to watch a background video now to give you a better sense of what these efforts looked like. And then we will come back and list a series of examples that were included in Friday's indictment.
They hide behind Twitter hashtags, Facebook ads, and fake news stories. They're the work of bots and trolls, and one of the most skilled countries at deploying them is Russia. So how do these entities actually work to spread disinformation? We asked two experts. This is St. Petersburg-based activist Lyudmila Savchuk. She's tracked disinformation campaigns and even gone undercover to learn how they work.
У кремлевских пропагандистов стоит задача такая, чтобы вот эти вот прописанные им сверху тезисы были облечены максимально лично обертку.
And this is Ben Nemo, a London-based analyst who focuses on information warfare.
The ultimate goal of all this disinformation is trying to influence real people.
Let's define what's what. A bot is short for robot. It's an automated social media account that operates without human intervention.
It's like a plane flying on autopilot. You can try and make an individual tweet look really popular by getting 100,000 bots to retweet it.
During the 2016 presidential election, suspected Russian operators created bots on Twitter to promote hashtags like War Against Democrats. A troll is an actual human being, motivated by passion or a paycheck, to write social media posts that push an agenda. In 2015, Savchuk worked undercover for over 2 months at a troll factory in Russia that has gone by many names, including Glavzit and the Internet Research Agency.
Я видела, как создаются посты и комментарии на тему США. И если, допустим, происходит что-то вроде, например, кто-то кого-то расстрелял, то эта тема подхватывалась и разносилась, и, в общем, многочисленные сотни троллей писали на разные лады свое личное отношение к этому.
Troll accounts are usually anonymous or pretend to be someone else, like hipsters or car repairmen, but it can even get stranger.
В моем отделе создавался образ экстрасенса женщины-гадалки, которая видит все, что видит вещи сны, и постоянно проводит какие-то ритуальные задания, и видит тоже в кремлевском духе все, что происходит.
Trolls can also set up bots to amplify a message.
What you'll often find is that one individual troll is surrounded by lots of bots which will then retweet them.
Facebook is one common platform for Russian trolls and bots, which in 2016 used fake accounts to influence U.S. elections. Here's how some experts think that played out. American officials suspect Russian intelligence agents of using phishing attacks to obtain emails damaging to the Hillary Clinton campaign. They then allegedly created a site called dcleaks.com to publish them. A troll on Facebook, using the name Melvin Reddick, was one of the first to hype the site, saying it contained the hidden truth about Hillary Clinton. An army of bots on Twitter then promoted the DC leaks, and in one case even drove a Hillary Down hashtag into a trending topic.
Я наблюдала, как множество аккаунтов ведут свою работу именно на тему американских выборов в социальных сетях, во всех. Я читала многочисленные комментарии, причем их оттенок всегда менялся в зависимости от политической обстановки, но это всегда видно было, что да, это работа множество кремлеботов.
Facebook believes that ads on divisive issues created by Russian trolls were shown to Americans over 4 million times before the elections. Russian-linked trolls and bots also try to exploit divisive issues and undermine faith in public institutions. Federal investigators and experts believed Russian trolls created Facebook groups like Blacktivist, which reposted videos of police beatings, or another, Secured Borders, which organized anti-immigrant rallies in real life.
Today, Russia hopes to win the Second Cold War through the force of politics as opposed to the politics of force.
How can you stop them? You can't. Even Vladimir Putin seems to agree. But IDing their tactics helps contain their influence. If a suspicious account is active during the workday in St. Petersburg, or posting dozens of items a day, those are red flags. Decode the anonymity, look for alphanumeric scrambles in a user's name, and try Googling its profile picture.
If you see somebody with an attractive photo on Twitter or Facebook, then search for the image and you'll probably find out that it's a German supermodel.
Look at the language. If an account makes grammar mistakes typical for Russian speakers or changes behavior during times of strained Russian-US relations, then congratulations, you might have caught a bot or a pro-Kremlin troll.
All right, so now we want to give you some more examples of what this cyber campaign looked like. And before we do that, and this is information from the indictment. First, we got to ask, did it matter? Let me give you some statistics on the views and the page hits. So the paid Facebook ads that were created out of this broader Russian campaign were viewed 11 million times. And the posts from the internet, from this campaign, were viewed 150 million times in 2016. Those stats are from Wired, an article last night, Wired.com. So these efforts were concentrated in purple states, people that lived in purple states like Colorado, Virginia, and Florida. Some examples of the fake accounts that I ran, the one that's gotten a lot of attention is one that was supposedly, that wasn't, but made to look like it was associated with the Republican Party in Tennessee. They used the handle @10_GOP. The site falsely claimed to be controlled by the state political party. This account attracted over 100,000 online followers. Russian trolls used this account to say that North Carolina was investigating allegations of voter fraud in the week before the election. And on November 2nd, 2016, they used this account to say that Broward County in Florida was counting tens of thousands of ineligible mail ballots cast in favor of Hillary Clinton. They were trying to undermine confidence in the electoral process. This was a campaign run from Russia. So we've got a so this is an example of the Facebook page of the Tennessee GOP. This was run by Russian nationals out of St. Petersburg. It wasn't real. It was linked to by campaign officials. Campaign officials retweeted stuff from the unknowingly retweeted stuff issued by the through this account on their own Twitter accounts. Let me give you some other examples from the indictment. There was a Facebook group called Secure Borders. Its account specialist was criticized in September of 2016 for having a low number of posts dedicated to criticizing Hillary Clinton. She was told to intensify her criticism in the future. Twitter accounts, March for Trump, Facebook accounts, Clinton Fraudation, Trumpsters United were all run by Russians. They drove traffic using the hashtags Trump Train, MAGA, Hillary for Prison. Again, these accounts criticized Clinton. They also criticized Ted Cruz and Rubio, and they drove traffic and tried to support Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump. Again, members and supporters of the Trump campaign unknowingly retweeted the content originating from these organizations. Something else they were doing, and this we're going to post this slide now. These groups actively tried to suppress minority votes. This is count number 46 in the indictment. They encouraged minority groups not to vote or to vote for a third party. They infiltrated an organizational controlled site, United Muslims of America, to post anti-vote messages. Here's a quote: "American Muslims are boycotting the elections. Most of American voters refuse to vote for Hillary because she wants to continue the war on Muslims in the Middle East." Again, these were Russians in St. Petersburg making these posts. And then in the summer of 2016, they began to actively promote allegations of voter fraud by the Democratic Party. They bought political ads that were run on Facebook. Let's hear some examples. "You know, a great number of black people support us, saying that Hillary Clinton is not my president." "Join Hillary Clinton for prison," 2016. "Donald wants to defeat terrorism. Hillary wants to sponsor it." "Vote Republican, vote Trump, and support the Second Amendment." May 24th, they ran an ad: "Hillary Clinton doesn't deserve the black vote." August 4th, they ran an ad: "Hillary Clinton has already committed voter fraud during the Democratic Iowa caucus." These are all examples. Let me give you another one. They used a Facebook group, United Muslims of America, to promote a rally on July 9th in 2016 in D.C. called a Support Hillary Rally, Save American Muslims. They then paid a real U.S. person to hold a sign depicting Clinton with a quote attributed to Clinton saying, "I think," quote, and they said, this is what Hillary said, which she didn't, "I think Sharia law will be a powerful new direction of freedom in the United States." They promoted competing counter rallies in New York in June and July of 2016, where they facilitated a pro-Trump rally, and then in June of 2016, then they supported an anti-Hillary rally in July of 2016. Again, they promoted
both sides for these issues to increase conflict. Now, why would they want to hold down minority voting participation? Because statistically, minorities vote more strongly for Democratic candidates. And so they had a strategy here.
All right, so let's step back and talk some about the broader political implications. We want to emphasize again today that the discussion is about Russian actions. This is not about collusion between Russia and the Trump campaign. Again, the indictment intentionally stayed away from making that accusation. Second, we want to come back to where we started. This indictment demonstrates that a major foreign power is trying to weaken the United States by stimulating domestic political conflict and polarization inside the United States. The influence campaign exploited existing political divisions along religious, racial, partisan, and regional lines and sought to make them worse. This influence campaign would have been effective if either Trump or Clinton had won the election. Now, this story also teaches us how domestic political debates inside the United States are rarely just internal. Foreign actors participate in them, and in this case, they violated U.S. election laws to do so. This means that this story about Russian interference in the electoral process is not just about the Trump presidency and whether you like or don't like him. Instead, this is about national security and the capacity of the U.S. government to protect its defining component, namely our ability to choose our leaders through democratic elections from foreign interference. It raises important questions about why the United States is not more actively confronting hostile actions by a foreign power, Russia, in these cases. Right? Moreover, these efforts to stoke domestic political conflict in the U.S. are continuing. As you saw in the videos, the Directorate for National Intelligence warned last week that Russia will try to do this again in this year's midterm elections. The New York Times released a story last night noting that Russian bots and trolls on Twitter are now actively trying to exploit last week's school shooting in Florida to stoke more political conflict in the United States over the Second Amendment. These accounts, which had been focused on the Mueller investigation, began releasing posts an hour after the shooting about the Second Amendment. Third, this issue about Russian interference in the election is also driving a wedge within the U.S. government. Intelligence agencies have acknowledged it. The former head of the FBI acknowledged this investigation. Trump said he fired the former head of the FBI because of the Russia investigation and his interest in the Russian investigation. And Trump's national security advisor described the evidence over the weekend at a national security conference among world leaders in Germany, as he described the evidence as incontrovertible, and yet the president quickly criticized him publicly. We've got a video clip we want to show with these remarks from McMaster. Let's run that.
I would just say that we would love to have a cyber dialogue when Russia is sincere about curtailing its sophisticated form of espionage, what you might call this modern day sort of form of Maskirovka, enabled by modern technology. And I think that day will be coming because we're becoming more and more adept at tracing the origins of this espionage and subversion. And as you can see with the FBI indictment, the evidence is now really incontrovertible and available in the public domain.
So this is important, right? This is the president's chief national security advisor saying publicly there's no doubt that Russia interfered. But this statement provoked a criticism from President Trump over Twitter because he said, well, he left out the part about how the indictment didn't say anything about the Russian interference didn't have anything to do with the election or that there wasn't any collusion.
And this is a central problem for the Trump administration, is that increasingly, if the president continues to just focus on the issue of collusion and how he's innocent and his administration and campaign was innocent of collusion and doesn't tackle the broader threat of intervention in the electoral process generally, there's going to be a problem. It's a message problem, and it's going to get increasingly, it's going to spark increasing conflict over this issue.